Muted, by the way. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the UpSet podcast. It's Sunday evening. Tonight we're talking about Christian education. Is it still relevant? Do we still need it? Do we need to switch up things a little bit? We're going to talk about all of that and more coming up next. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in this evening. We're excited about tonight's topic. We're excited about being live and interacting with you. And no more talking. Let's bring on the crew. What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey, here.
Happy Sunday. So before we start our little chatter, we have some exciting news for this evening. There's 4 of us, but actually we have a special guest host joining us today. We're going to bring him on right now. Welcome, Pastor Corey Johnson. What's up? Welcome to the UpSet.
What's up, everybody?
Welcome.
Excited to be a part. Excited to be an UpSetter for a day. So I feel right at home.
Great. Because if you didn't, you were going to feel that way by the end. So thanks for joining us. As always, we like to kind of start off by talking about what was standing out in our weeks. What were we seeing on our timelines? What was the news saying that kind of got our eyebrows raised? So, guys, what's the latest?
I think the greatest news that I heard in the last 24, 48 hours is Simone Biles is back at it.
Yes, I saw that.
She's back on the trail, and she seems happy and healthy, and her first competition, she just blew everybody away. I mean, after being off since 2020, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. She is definitely going to the Olympics next year, I'm sure. But that's something to celebrate for a lot of reasons, for folk that are having to deal with mental health issues, as well as athletes, in the sport. So
it's okay to take some time away, come back stronger. Doesn't mean, you're a one-hit wonder. She's doing great things. I'll be watching that.
Yeah.
What else is happening, guys? What about no, I'll let you guys go ahead before I mention that.
Well, I think our the former president got more charges. I was gonna say that, it seems like it's a once a month occurrence.
Yeah.
More trouble, more charges for Trump for trying to overturn an election.
I know. It's amazing to me. It's like every time I picked up my phone this week, I was like, oh, indicted? Okay, how many charges this time? It's like, and the thing that gets me is because where I live, every other day, there's a new huge Trump, like I'm not talking about banners anymore. I'm talking about they're erecting their own billboards, just on the side of the road. And I said, this thing is revving up again. And it's scaring me because it's I thought I lived through it once, and I feel like I'm about to live through this again. It's just crazy. The Trump phenomenon is back again. It's crazy.
Yeah, in our neighborhood, there were people who have Trump 2020 flags up, and the day after inauguration, they had Trump 2024 flags up. They just were just churning out content, right? They just don't care.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's kind of scary. Oh, I see some people saying hi to us. I forgot to say hi to the people. Hello, Rochelle. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey.
Dr. Lucum, Dr. D, thanks for tuning in.
We also had Rita had a birthday. I think it was yesterday. Yep.
And welcome to Pastor Johnson. Yeah. Happy birthday to Rita.
The best month.
We see you. That's right, because GP had a birthday.
That's right.
We got a lot going on. GP had a birthday. Corey had an anniversary. Was it yesterday, Corey? And
you don't see him, he's still smiling. He's still smiling.
Turn 5. Turn
All
5.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
man.
We love it. We love it. Monte Cristo, dude. What's up, guys? Good to see you again. All right, Nicole. Thank you. Yeah, that's why we're a little late today. Don't tell anybody. And Rodney, what's up? Good to see you back in the house this evening. Good evening to you. Yeah. All right, guys. So
Tiffany.
Tiffany, it's all right, Tiff. We still love you. All right, yeah. Tonight we are talking about Christian education. I don't want to cut off our preliminary talk if you guys have some other things in the news that you wanted to talk about. But I am excited to talk about Christian education. One of the big things happening this weekend, I've seen it on my posts that a lot of people are taking their kids back to Oakwood. You guys have seen that, like dropping the kids off and
all the tears, everybody crying, and
as a matter of fact, Marlena, she dropped her son off, and she's traveling back from Oakwood right now, which is why she's not with us. But every time I think about that, I remember when my parents were dropping me off for college, and I remember what that was like, especially as a freshman, and walking through those arches and shedding those tears, like, oh no, I'm really on my own. So shout out to all those returning and new students at Oakwood University and those who are going other places. All right, we have some more people.
There's some parents that are going to be singing that song, that song from the Staples commercial. It's the most wondrous time of the year.
They're like, get out. They're like kicking them out the car, right? Like, do well. Hey, what's up, Mr. Luca? Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Is it a warning? Oh, no warning. Yes, Rodney, you are seeing that correct. We have Pastor Johnson with us talking.
Rodney's good people, man. That's my guy, man. We were both at North Church together, man.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. All right, guys, we're going to dive in and talking about Christian education. As you guys know, as I mentioned, many are going back to school this month. October is when things start revving up for a lot of, particularly our schools starting in October. I know some, like in Alabama, like the elementary schools started like last week, and some people started like in July. I'm like, oh, where was your summer? But whenever we talk about education, one of the things I've found about our constituents is that it's a priority and we really care about it. And so we decided that we wanted to dedicate actually the whole month of August, because we never feel like we have enough time to really delve into the areas that we really want to. And from the previous discussions that we've had, we realized that it takes a village. It takes all of us to make it successful. So we felt like it was worth the time in investing in talking about it. And so, guys, we're just going to dive right in and ask that question. Is Christian education, what is so important about Christian education? Well, let me rephrase that. We know Christian education is important as Christians. What's important about Adventist Christian education? Like, we got to add that in there, because that's what distinguishes us from all other forms of Christian education. So I'm going to throw that out to you guys first. What do you think makes Adventist education unique? Let's hear it.
Lord, it's quiet in the house.
I know. What's going on? I had to check.
Quiet in the house. You know what? And let me just say, because my parents took me out of public school education at 5th grade. My brother's at 5th grade, and what it did for me at that time, just a couple of years ago, it kept us in the triangle. It kept us in this. I'm just talking about what's good. You said Adventist education. So Sabbath we were at church. Sunday we were at Pathfinders. The rest of the week we're seeing the same people at school, and the triangle just kept going. Home, school, church. Home, school, church. So it just kind of built that community, and there was not you didn't have to worry about the doctrinal side of it because all of it was there. You didn't have to be careful. So all of it was there. So I think that Adventist Christian education is important based on the triangle: homeschool, and church.
So what I heard Pat articulate is that he was in a safe bubble.
Safer, GP.
At school, the bubble from home was continued in a new environment, but it was still contained.
Safer.
Yeah, I'm looking at what Dr. D said, that Adventist education is holistic, mind, body, and soul. And then Tiffany came right behind her and said, some other Christian schools would argue that they offer the same. So I mean, that's a interesting setup there, because you say something, Charles?
No, I wasn't gonna. I was just thinking, I know Adventist education is important. It's especially important to us because we're Seventh-day Adventists. But there are other Christian schools also that have the same kind of theme and connection with their churches, maybe less than ours or more than ours. But it is interesting that Adventist education has a certain uniqueness outside of the other Christian schools. The main thing is all the schools are Christ-centered, and that's what's important. Our Sabbath worship, makes us distinctive, from that perspective. But Adventist education, I think, goes a few steps higher with the curriculum and the interconnection with the church, the parents, the teachers. So I think there is a uniqueness about our school, but there are others that are trying to do the job as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I'm looking at some of the comments. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I would say on a basic level, indoctrination. And I think indoctrination is oftentimes seen as in the pejorative sense, but it's just the reaffirming of what we believe. So that there is in Adventist education more time given towards theological indoctrination and teaching the distinctives. I would also say indoctrination in terms of culture. And I think that it's important to distinguish between Adventist doctrine and Adventist culture. I don't know if that's always a good thing or a bad thing. That's why we're here.
Come on. This is the upsetters,
right? So I'm just saying, to answer the question, indoctrination of doctrine and culture. And then lastly, I would say Adventist education provides a certain level of social capital. I think the value goes beyond education. It is network. It is being able to connect with people of similar beliefs, but as you go into the workplace, going to Oakwood, going to our Pine Forges, it does create a certain level of social capital that is necessary, especially for Black Adventist education going forward. So I think those are some of the benefits of Adventist education, specifically outside.
And for someone who attended public school from kindergarten all the way up to Oakwood, was my first experience with Adventist education. I will say that it was difficult in some ways being an Adventist in a public school, because my friends were always going out on Friday nights. The prom was like on a Friday or Saturday, like people were getting ready. There were so many activities that I could not participate in. And so it put me in a situation where I always kind of felt like an outcast. I felt like the odd man out in a lot of instances, or I couldn't play certain sports because I wouldn't be able to go to some of the games of the week. So I think in those ways, it helps. I mean, and some people say, well, you have to prepare them for the real world. But as a child, and really not having the choice, because when you're growing up, your parents are making those choices for you. And my parents were the type that were not going to let me play on Sabbath, and they were not going to let me participate in certain things. And so it always put me in this place of not really understanding what I believed yet, but knowing that I just couldn't do things and feeling awkward. So I feel like, that was one of the reasons I wanted my children. I didn't want my children to go through that. I wanted them to be in an environment where their standards, other people held the same beliefs. There were other activities that would take place that they could participate in. So they didn't feel like they were missing out on anything because they were around people who were doing some of the same things. So just from a
What did you tell your friends?
I can't.
Did you tell them why?
My parents don't. I mean, there were times when I did start off when I was younger. It was much easier to say, I go to church on Saturday, so I'm not, I'm not gonna be able to join you.
What was that?
I go to church on Saturday.
Your mic? Okay. I can.
Yeah.
It sounds real low.
Do I sound low?
Is that how you spoke to them?
No, I felt weird saying it. You know what I mean? I felt because it wasn't a conviction of mine yet as a kid. You know what I mean? I was just knew I couldn't go because my parents were not going to let me go. But I didn't see it. I didn't have the pride in saying, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist and I believe in the Seventh-day Sabbath. And therefore I have these hours I consider sacred. I didn't have that vocabulary or that understanding when I was younger enough to articulate it. And then as I got older, I was able to share that. But even still, sometimes people just didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why you can't come, or I don't understand why you can't. And so you just found yourself feeling like you constantly have to defend what you believe to people who don't get it.
Well, I was in a public junior high and high and became an Adventist when I was early teens. I didn't have a problem telling them not going to be there. They were a little crazy anyway.
You're happy now.
I didn't have any difficulty. And those that did find out, what my religious background was, I wasn't ashamed. In fact, I got an extra level of respect from some of my friends at school. So I didn't struggle with that at all. I know everybody has a different experience, but I think the level of respect went up when I just said what I said. Oh, you're not going to be at the dance. You're not going to be at the football. And I told them why. And they said, okay, all right. Maybe, it was a different time,
Yeah.
and I mean, they were either your friends or not your friends, So the real friends, I didn't have any trouble with them.
I'm looking at some of the comments Havis said. I guess he mentioned that he went to a Catholic school. He said they enjoyed telling the nuns they were SDA. Getting a rise out of the nuns.
So one of the things that I notice about the majority of our Seventh-day Adventist institutions is that there is usually a low student to teacher ratio. Like, teacher can spend dedicated time with students, and the teachers aren't necessarily overwhelmed with a multitude of students. And so because the student to teacher ratio is good, you can have more dedicated time for certain students who may have special needs or who need special attention. Also, for Black SDA schools, I mean, you have Black teachers. That's a rarity. Most kids don't have the privilege. Most Black kids don't have Black educators in their life, and that's a blessing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mine was especially terrible. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and all of the churches they have broken off from like a mother church, like how you have Ebenezer. So everyone who's in Ebenezer in Philly, you know who goes to North, who goes to Germantown. So when we were growing up, my teachers grew up with my aunts and uncles. So it made it not only, I think this is what Corey was talking about, also there's a cultural side that came to that also, where when I was growing up, there was, they had Brownie. I don't know if y'all know who Brownie is or what Brownie is, but there's Brownie. Brownie's the belt. Where the Catholics had the rulers. Oh, you have Blackie? Ours was Brownie. And so that's the cultural side of it also, that we grew up in that area where everybody knew everyone. So So like you were saying, you were talking about black teachers. We also had black male teachers, which when I was growing up. I mean, things have changed over the years, but I still maintain the what you said, Corey, culture. You mentioned two. You said culture
Indoctrination.
and indoctrination. When we were growing up, it was about indoctrination. That's all it was. You reach 12 years old. You got 11, 12 years old. You're going to be baptized. It doesn't matter if you know it all already. You're just going to be baptized, and then you move from there. You can't be an usher unless it all worked within one whole system.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. I think we mentioned a lot of the things that I've heard in our PR, if you will, in terms of, building the community, making sure they understand the fundamentals of what we believe as Adventists, the smaller, which as you said, GP, the smaller, more intimate classrooms, which provide a nice environment for learning, the student to teacher ratio. And then so many of you have shared how going to an Adventist school growing up has shaped you in so many different ways. And we saw Dr. Trevor Kinlock's research on the benefits of attending Black Adventist schools as well. So I think we have a lot of reasons why Christian education is valued, and some of you are even putting some things in the comment. So let's take this discussion a bit further, and we're going to have our superintendent join us shortly. I'll have our superintendent join us shortly. But with all that being said, is it time for Adventist Christian education as we know it to shift? We talk about shifting on this podcast a lot. We talk about shifting worship.
I gotta go.
Shifting evangelism. We talk about shifting. So now that we're talking about education, do we feel like it's time for us to maybe shift our model of how we do Adventist Christian education? And that can mean so many different things. I'm putting it out there wide. So, I'm sorry. I see a comment here before we look at that one. I think it's important to look at both sides of this. Damali was saying that she appreciated her Christian education. However, her sister felt that it didn't prepare them for real life. And I have heard people say that in some instances. So even as we're talking about the shifting, we can think about how can we provide that balance so that we're not so focused on indoctrination. Not saying that we are, but if our focus is on indoctrination to the point where when people go out, they don't know how to interact with people who aren't Adventists, or, they lived such a sheltered life that they don't really know how to interact with people who don't believe the same things. How do we create that balance?
Let's be realistic. There's a shift, and there's a shift that comes along with every generation. And the problem is that, we're not waking up to the shift until it's becoming too late. And that is where, I don't know, I wish maybe next week I'll introduce the book, How to Kill Christian Education, by Shane Anderson. He is, I think now, I'm not sure, I think now he is the pastor of the PMC church, and I think so. But if you read through that book, you'll understand that there's some things we have not done anymore. So I'll give a great example of a shift. GP was talking about that there were times when a teacher had the ratio, and so, but here's a student to teacher ratio. Now here's the question: it worked back then. Does it work now? You understand what I'm saying? When you start to look at the social life of the student, things have changed. Social media has changed a whole lot. Television has changed. YouTube, which teachers have changed. There's so many different things. The problem that I feel is that we have to stay close to the cusp. The question is, are we staying that close to the cusp in the shifting?
Yeah, I think spiritually, we always are strong in that aspect. But when it comes to extracurricular or, some schools, they might not be equipped to have the latest STEM opportunities for their students in our schools. So parents really want their children to be competitive in the world, and they love the fact that we can teach them about God and the Adventist doctrines. But at the end of the day, our kids need to compete with the best of them out there. And so some of our schools are not up to par. Some of our schools are. Some of our schools are above par. But how can we improve the quality? And I know it's a big question. Yes, we need parental involvement. We need investment. We need resources. We need connections, collaborations, marketing. But what kind of shift do we need? Do we need like to dismantle the system and start afresh? Are we willing to do that? Or do we just want to make minor tweaks and act like nothing's wrong while our schools are dying?
Well, that's a great segue to bring in our superintendent. Hey, John.
Hey, Latasha. Hey, everybody.
Welcome to the UpSet. As you can hear, we've been upsetting a few things, John, talking about Christian education. We talked about the value. Now we're entertaining the shift. What do we need to do to get better? I know if you heard some of what GP was sharing. But what are you seeing as superintendent and as some necessary shifts that you think we're going to have to make as it relates to how we do education now?
Well, I think we're living in a world where education is more competitive. And so we've come away from the fact that back in the day, people just put their kids in Adventist schools because it was what you were supposed to do.
Right.
We're not doing that anymore. Now you have what's called school choice, where a parent can send their child to a charter school and still get the same private school education that they will get at an Adventist private school. And they feel that they can do the Adventist part at home or take them to Pathfinders or cyber school, whatever that is. And what we have to do is to make sure that our schools are competitive. And that might mean making sure we have some more bells and whistles than we had before, more computers, more smart boards. Not saying that those things are the end all be all, but when parents walk into our school, it needs to look as competitive as if they walk into a Catholic school or a charter school or a public school down the street. And so that's money. I mean, we hate to use that M word, but that's money. That is what we need to make sure we're making that shift.
Mm-hmm. Corey, we see your mouth moving, but we're not hearing you. Try it again. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, good. I was trying to get this sound together. It seems like we're lost, to be quite frank. Like, it just seems like there's an identity crisis that we can say that the church is dealing with, but specifically the education wing of the church is dealing with. And I think it is for two reasons. Number one, there is no more, or people are not responding to the peer pressure and fear mongering of Adventist education. That comes from the pulpit. People don't care. Like, we can't scare them into sending their kids to our schools anymore. So I think that was one thing that was huge for us. Number two was the inability to make choices, right? So when as a people within the Black community, when we didn't have many choices beyond the public school for how much money we were making or how much our income was, the Adventist school was the best choice we could make. And that's no longer necessarily true. And I want to know what you think on this point, John. Is the issue that we don't know whether we are missional schools or private schools? And I feel like we're trying to be both. And I think that's really hard. Here's what I mean. It is possible that when we look at our membership, like the members of Allegheny's Conference, and we look at what they're able to tithe, what they're bringing in, what their careers are, it is possible that our schools are actually underfunded because our members aren't paying enough in tuition. And that if they were sending their kid to a private school that was not an Adventist school, they'll be spending much more if they really had to assess how much they can afford for education. And when you're underfunding your members who can afford $40,000 for a private day school, you can't have the money to be a mission to the parent who can't afford it. And so everybody's dealing with an underfunded education, because when it costs $25,000 to get the quality but parents who are making 100, 150, 250,000 are paying 13,000 for tuition, I think it hurts everybody. And so I feel like we have to kind of decide, are we losing out on clientele because we're trying to be missional to the point that we're just underfunded and it's not helping anyone? That's what I wanted to raise.
That is an excellent point. I'm sorry, I'm here, man. Because that's, John, I know you hear this all the time, that one of the complaints we get is that it's so expensive, we can't afford it. And so we find ourselves trying to, like Corey's saying, stay in that mark where we drop the price so low that we can't pay our teachers what we want. We can't, get enough stuff for the school because we're trying to appease this group of people. Whereas if we raise our standard a little higher, those who can afford it, because we're providing this stellar education, will have enough to trickle down to those who can't afford it. So instead of cowering down to those who can't, should we be lifting? I don't know. What do you have to say about that, John? What do you think?
So Corey, that's a good point. And I would tell you that's what other parochial private schools do. They'll charge the $35,000 to $40,000 to the parents who can pay that a year, and then they'll give the scholarships to the individuals who can't afford it. And so what's happening is that the money's coming in for the ones who can't afford it, and then it's trickling down and even out to those who can afford it. And so you're hitting both. You're also able to be a mission school, but you're also not underfunded. And I think that's how we're not operating. And maybe we should operate that way. Say, look, those who can afford to pay the $15,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, we're going to charge you that. Those who cannot afford to pay it, based on your the information you provide, then we're going to subsidize it and give you a scholarship, whatever the case may be. Because what happens is, if I take a Mercedes-Benz, for example, and I take the Mercedes tags off of it and maybe put another tag on it and sell that Mercedes for $6,000, it's going to still be a $60,000 car. And the person who buys it for $6,000 is going to feel like, well, it's just a regular old car. They're getting a $30,000, $40,000. They might be getting a $30,000, $40,000 education, but because we're only charging so much, they feel that they're not getting the education that they're supposed to get. So we have to find that balance. We still have to be a mission school for those who can't afford it, because in the last days, that's evangelism. But for those who can afford it, we need to make sure we're charging them those correct prices, because again, education still is not free. I don't know if I answered the question, but
even public school education is not free.
It's not free.
Let's get that straight. We pay taxes in our neighborhoods, especially if you live around where John Alberty live. You pay taxes on and it's still not free. I agree with everyone on this. You still got to pick up on if you come up to speed with prices, you got to come up to speed with, again, accessories, STEM, extracurricular activities, the best teachers. And when I say that, I mean, I really mean that. I mean, if we go out there looking for pastors, we should not be looking for pastors that's namby-pamby or just basically made the line or cross the okay line or the normal line. We ought to be looking for the best and be able to pay them. And I say we can. If you want to go for the upsetting of this, I believe, and I've said this before, and producer, I'll talk about this as we go through. I always believe that our teachers need to be paid more than what they are being paid now. Of course, John, that has nothing to do with you as our superintendent. I mean, we understand that. If we're talking about shifts, there has to be a radical shift in order for the educational system to be back on top. Not just on top, but back on top, because that's where we used to be.
I think
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think one of the shifts we ought to look at also is our community involvement. We can be so siloed that we miss opportunities in our communities. Why not partner with other schools and other organizations on issues of education and opportunity, because they, worship on the first day, or we have crosses our doctrinal lines. We tend to not engage some of the communities that our schools are in. I think there are great opportunities for our schools if we would just be more intentional with community engagement. And you talk about STEM. I had the opportunity to live stream some tournaments on STEM and for our schools. But what I learned, and this was on the NAD level, what I learned was that they did partnering with other STEM organizations. Our Adventist kids were there at the tournaments, and so were others. And by doing that, they were able to get sponsorship from major corporations, and our kids were involved. So I just think a little bit more intentional community involvement with our communities and with corporations who have monies for organizations like this. I think that will be, it also be a good opportunity for our young people to engage other young people who are not Seventh-day Adventists. We talk about Adventist education being an evangelistic tool. I think if we're intentional about engaging our communities, that would be a shift that would be healthy for us.
So that leads me to this question as I look at this comment. Rodney saying many non-Adventists will pay what we may not pay as Adventists, and we have to broaden our horizon and our reach. So John, who is our target audience for our schools? Who's the target audience?
And so I like that question because we have to change our target audience. We continue to target to our members, and we shouldn't be doing that. I always tell people, you don't go inside a McDonald's and try to sell a Big Mac. The people inside McDonald's already know you sell Big Mac because it's on the menu. We should be trying to push our schools to everybody. I mean, if our schools are going to be a beacon on a hill, then all the kids in the community should be aware that our schools exist. And they're not. We have a lot of schools where people in the community don't even know that we're there. And that's the issue. And so, yes, for evangelistic purposes, just right off the bat, our goal is to market our schools to everyone in our communities. Again, if you look at other doctrines, they do that because their goal is to get the students into the school so they can indoctrinate. And we have to be doing the same thing. They may not be Adventists when they come, but the prayers, by the time they graduate from our schools, the child is Adventist, the mother's Adventist, the father's Adventist. And so we need to be advertising to everyone. And we have a lot of First Day churches and other type of churches in the area where parents are just looking for a Christian school, but they don't know we're there.
Yeah. I see his comment from Carrie, who's saying those who can afford more tuition tend to look for broader curricular offerings, which we were talking about as part of our shift. And so we still need to have a stronger financial investment to remain viable. So of course we can't offer these things if we don't have that financial investment in order to offer those things. So it's like, it goes back to a question someone asked earlier. How do we help our constituents understand this? How do we educate ourselves that we need to invest, in order, if we want the things we say we want out of Christian education or Adventist, that means it requires something on our part financially to make it happen. We can't get this quality on a discount.
Right.
At the same time,
go ahead.
We don't market our schools. We don't talk about our schools.
I was just going to say that.
Highlight our schools.
That's right.
We don't invite the church members to come and visit the school during the day. If we did more advertising and more public relations, even within our own bubble, I think the interest would not only go up, but the investment would go up as well.
Yeah. I say all hands on deck, from the pulpit to the pews, all hands on deck. There's always something to be done in a school environment that everybody doesn't have to get paid for it. We have excellent teachers who have retired who wouldn't have a problem with coming back and putting their time in. custodians. To me, there's still a volunteer listing. But let me go back to this. It starts from the pulpit to the community. If the pastor does not have an investment in Christian education in some way or another, because I had to take one of my kids out because he has special needs. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about knowing that a system can work, but also believing in the shift, John. I'm not where you are. You have to believe while the shift is going. So it may not happen next year or the year after or the year after that. But look for the long term. We ought to occupy till Jesus comes. The amount of Catholics say, and I'm hoping I'm getting this right, you give me your kid for 5 years,
You'll be a Catholic for life.
You're gonna be a Catholic for life, and look at Havis. Havis think he Adventist, but he not. He Catholic. No, but I'm just saying all hands on deck. That's what I'm saying. All hands on deck.
And there needs to be across the board promotion for Christian education, especially those congregations and those pastors that have no physical connection to a school. It's easy to get out of the promotion when you don't have a school in your community, in your area, or attached to your building. So I think there needs to be a conference-wide mechanism that all churches are promoting Christian education, whether they are directly involved with a school or not.
And we are going to deep dive into that. Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I want to add this because we say that every pastor has a school. Did they forget that every church has a school? It's called Pine Forge Academy. If you don't have a school in your area, you have Pine Forge Academy. So no matter what, every child across the Allegheny East Conference, once they get to high school age, they have the ability to go to Pine Forge. We should be preaching not just the schools in our area, but we should be preaching Pine Forge constantly. There's not a month that should go by where there's not a Christian education or Allegheny East education highlight. So I just wanted to add that. And I agree with both what you and Pat said. It really starts at the pulpit. I've been preaching at some churches lately, and I appreciate those pastors inviting me out.
I'm sorry, John, you've been what? I didn't hear you. You've been what?
Speaking.
No, you said preaching.
I have to remember I'm not a pastor. I did say preaching. I've been speaking at some churches lately. So
yeah, no, and you got and let you jump in, Corey. But I was just going to say, we're going to spend some time on that next week, our next show, about church involvement. Whose job is it really to promote our schools? And we're going to talk about school boards and all that. So this is commercial. Man. For next week, we're going to deep dive into that because that comes up every time we have this discussion, and we need to really piece it out what that looks like for church involvement. But go ahead, Corey. What were you saying?
Yeah, my bad. I had some technical difficulties. So I was going to say, I think sometimes we have this cultural internalized insecurity, and we repeat to ourselves that we have nothing to offer.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I think that plays itself in our lack of outward promotion. Like I would say I've learned in the last few years that there are Black people who would choose our schools who are not members of our churches. They would.
Yes.
I know it for sure. And I think when we internalize this, our schools are for us. I think we're missing out on a whole market of people who are looking for, number one, a school that is private but not lily white, right? So, or if you're in where I'm from and hit it, Philadelphia, the private education is white. There aren't Black, just non-Adventist private schools anymore. When I grew up at Larchwood, there was Larchwood, but there was also Hope Church School. There was Mount Airy had a school. West Oak Lane had a school. Ivy Leaf, Black private schools. Now they've all closed.
Mm.
And so now you're either sending your Black child to a white school,
or pastor or charter.
or charter.
Remember now, you got these charter schools.
Yeah, they're coming up everywhere.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
really, dedicated to our Black communities.
Mhm.
Have strong communities, have their pathfinders, if you understand what I mean. They have their rope, their rites of passages. Go ahead, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think if just the cultural mentality changed to where we say we have something that fills a gap beyond our constituency, it would expand not only just the schools, but our churches and our community. Like Chuck talked about, our community partnerships. If we like, as John talked about, really focused on expanding who our clientele is.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you about a mindset. How do we enact a shift to deal with the mindset of some Seventh-day Adventists are uncomfortable or don't want their children going to our schools with students who are not Seventh-day Adventists?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Charles, I'm gonna say something, and I probably won't get invited back again after I say it.
This is the place to say those things, John.
That's why I said what I said, so you could say it.
I
Go
will
ahead.
tell you, we have a tendency to think that it's the non-Seventh-day Adventist students who could be the bad influence all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, it's not always the non-Seventh-day Adventist students. And so when we put our kids together, non-Seventh-day Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, we have to stop worrying about who's going to influence who.
You talking about
And be more
my
concerned
kids,
about-
John? You talking about my kids, or what are you talking about here?
Fighting words.
You talking about,
I'm just saying, kids are kids. Kids are kids, and so we think as Adventists that our kids are angels, and that the world kids are not angels. You have good kids and bad kids on both sides. Bottom line.
Right.
And when they come into that Adventist environment, they're all the same at that point, because they're all standing in front of that same Adventist Christian teacher, learning the same values.
Right.
And what
Right.
a lot of times we forget, a lot of times those non-Adventist parents send their kids to our Adventist schools because they have the same Christian values. They may not attend church on Sabbath, but they have
Right.
the same values. And so you're right. And I've seen it happen. I've seen a school that has become predominantly community-based, and we have very few Adventist kids, and then they're leaving because they feel that, oh, you have so many community-based kids. That's not the way it's supposed to go. We need to continue to keep our kids in those schools so they can keep our kids in those schools and not pull them out, because at the end of the day, that's not the way we should be operating. We should not be operating that way. And I will tell you this, going back to something that was said earlier about, Corey, you said it. Sometimes we do undervalue what we have. We do. I was intentional. I didn't work for Allegheny East Conference. I didn't know anything about Allegheny East Conference. I mean, I knew about it growing up from the Pathfinders. They always had the prettiest girls when I was a kid. But at Camporee, I'm just saying. But when I moved to the area, what I knew was that I wanted to put my kids in a predominantly African-American school that shared my values. That's how I found DuPont Park. It had nothing to do with, I was intentional. I didn't want them in a school where kids didn't look like them. And so there's a market for parents who, Adventists, not Adventists, who want their kids in a school that look like them, especially what we're dealing with now in this country. So, and we have to market that.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll talk about this, because we have 4 shows to do on this, but there are some people who feel that when we say we want our kids in schools with other kids that look like them, some people characterize that as a racist comment, number one. Number two, do we shoot ourselves in the foot by saying, oh, no, we don't want to, we want all our, kids, in the school to be African-American or Black? Or is that what you're saying? Because you have other cultures, you have Spanish, you have there are Muslim, there are Arabs, there are other people of color. What are we saying when we say that? Or do we intend to put a racial spin on the comment?
And I don't want to hog the conversation, but I can tell you, Charles, it's not a racist comment, not by any means. Because we don't discriminate within our schools. We accept all kids, races, gender, whatever color, ethnic group. Religion, that's not the issue. The issue comes from society. So that's not an issue about Adventist education or Black Adventist education. We have to remember that HBCUs, and I'm loving that Hillman shirt, HBCUs exist because
we like your shirt too, John.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just embarrassing my son walking around with my Oakwood Dad shirt on. He's so embarrassed by it, but I'm gonna keep wearing it. Again, our schools, we always have to remember the history. We didn't just wake up one day and say we're going to segregate ourselves. That's not what happened. Right. HBCUs, regional conference schools, they were started out of necessity for a place for us, by us, because we weren't being accepted in other places. And so that's is never going to be a racial issue. I mean, it's not a racist comment. It's based on history. That's how we got here. That's why we have regional conferences. That's why we have Howard University, Oakwood, Alabama A&M. I just shouted out my two alma maters. So, but it's out of necessity. But
I say that because I'm just echoing what some people have said. They echo these comments, and maybe it's an excuse to not send their kid. But but there have been people, who've felt that way. There are some who have said that, well, I want my kid to be in an Adventist school or a Christian school that is multicultural, so they will know how to interact with people of other races and kids of other races and background. So, and these are things that I've heard. Now, that's not anti-Black. That's not it's just that there are some parents who in their mind say, I want just a little more, I'm proud to be, a Black Seventh-day Adventist parent, and my kids are proud, but it would be nice if they could interact with others of other races to maybe talk about shifts, to maybe start that shift in the direction of not segregating our schools, because we are still a separated church, in my opinion.
And Charles, and I will say this, because I hear that a lot. I've heard it a lot. And I tell every parent, you have a right to send your child where you feel comfortable and where you feel is going to make your child the best individual they're going to be. So my comments are never against what a parent decision is. If they feel they want their child in a school that is a little bit more diverse, then that's great. And because that's their child. But what I will tell you, what I've noticed is that when you have students who are of African descent in schools that are predominantly of African descent, they come out very sure about who they are. And actually, they operate a lot better in the world because they have not been, I won't say beat down, that's the wrong word, but that their confidence level is so high. And you see it. You see it with an Oakwood grad, a Pine Forge alum. You see people who come out of these schools that are predominantly African American, and they just go into it, and they are at the top of their game because they have been lifted up so high. And I tell people, they have the rest of their life to be around other cultures, because we only make up 12% of the population. And when they go into the workplace, they'll adapt.
Yeah, and I want to say that it's possible for a school to be Black owned, Black led, Black operated, but still diverse.
Yeah,
because there's diversity even within Blackness and within minority ethnicities.
That's right. That's true.
Now, for those who make, I'm going to rattle the cage some more. Anything I say, let me put a disclaimer right there. Anything I say is not my opinion. Okay. All I'm saying is, since we're talking about it, let's deep dive. If someone, and again, this is from conversations I've had, if someone compares Forest Lake Academy with Pine Forge Academy, and they see a racial mix at that school and a non-racial mix at Pine Forge Academy. How do you handle a person that says, my child is of high school age and I'm really thinking about sending them to, you fill in the blank, academy? What about that parent that says, Forest Lake or any other, I use Forest Lake. I'm not trying to promote Forest Lake, but I'm using Forest Lake as an example. If they say, well, I really would like for them to go to Forest Lake because it's such a diverse group of students. All right. That's their, as a parent, that's their preference. How do you discuss the difference between Pine Forge Academy and Forest Lake or any other perhaps more diverse or integrated academy when it comes to racial mix and quality of education?
I attended Forest Lake Academy, and although Forest Lake is diverse, it was not integrated. And I wish I would have attended Pine Forge Academy. I'm grateful for my FLA experience, but had I gone to Pine Forge Academy, I would have been a little more confident, a little more just. I call Pine Forge Academy the Pine Forge advantage. Because when you're in a context where you're affirmed, reminded of who you are, you're exposed to excellence, you will be a cut above. And as said before, you will have plenty of time the rest of your life to engage in a diverse world. And so it's the critical time in your life where you need to be empowered, where you need to be poured into. And I think there's no better context for a young Black person to be than in a Black-led school. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And that would be your answer to the person who asked that question.
Yeah. And I will tell you, Charles, if they ask me as well, I would say we have to look at the numbers. We have to look at the data also. Pine Forge provides, and I'm just talking about Pine Forge, and this is nothing against Forest Lake Academy, but our students, we have 100% graduation rate, and they all go to college. They all do well. It's down to what do you want for your child? And so a lot of times people will say, well, I want diversity. And I don't engage in that argument anymore because, again, parents make their own decisions about where they want to send their children. All I can tell you is that my best friend went to Pine Forge, and I can tell you when he graduated from Pine Forge, salutatorian, what Pine Forge did for him and his brother and everybody else I saw, it made me I wanted to go to Pine Forge. Again, we didn't make the same type of money as the Grahams made, so my parents couldn't afford to send me. But so I didn't end up at Pine Forge. But again, from a distance, when I went to go visit what I saw, you see it now. When Pine Forge graduates came to Oakwood and they didn't have their sweaters, a year or two ago.
Oh yeah.
Pine Forge graduates came out the woodwork to make sure they had their sweaters. It's not just about going to Pine Forge. It's almost like being in a lifelong family when you go to a school.
You could say fraternity, sorority,
sorority, fraternity and sorority.
I don't know if Adventist like to use that fraternity and sorority word.
You can say
exactly what it is,
and that's what it is. And sometimes you could be adopted into it, because I love Pine Forge. Everybody believes my brothers and I went to Pine Forge, but it's bigger than that. It's the excellency. I remember in when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, the choir traveled, and the choir would make 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stops. Just jumping on the train, just like Pastor CJ Corey said, and we have to advertise the best in what we do. If we don't advertise what we do, people are not going to know. We tend to put out the worst stories and not the best of our stories,
right?
And that's what we need to do: put out the best of them.
That's right. That's right. Man, this is getting good, y'all. I mean,
I think we mentioned. I forget who mentioned it earlier in the answering of the shift that needs to be made. I think we need to make a concerted effort to make sure our kids are exposed to every level, especially of science. There is there's a need for engineers. There are a need for code writers and computer technicians, and we need to make an extra push towards that. Not all of our students will go into religious studies or be, pastors. Many will go into, well, we're hoping that many will go into education, but also the sciences. We need to, really emphasize the sciences and technology. That can get expensive, but, those are the things that will attract not only Adventist families, but non-Adventist families. You have a STEM program, or you have something that is engaging on a science level, I think is where also we need to do an intentional shift to include that in our curriculums.
I appreciate John for saying like he's not even stressing over that diversity conversation anymore, because to me, and this is just Corey talking, if I have to debate over the Black Adventist school versus one where they're not even really trying to recruit our teachers and affirm who we are, that's a debate it's just not worth, I think, the time or the energy.
Corey, say whatever you want to say, just don't curse, okay?
It's not worth it. Like if we have to debate between Pine Forest, it just let them have, because there's another, and my point is there's a whole bigger world out there that will fill those seats, who will appreciate what we have to offer. And I just, it gets so frustrated when we add like diversity is only racial designation. It's so,
and let me fight on Chuck's part.
So
let me fight on Chuck's part. He's right. When I say he's right, I'm saying those questions are out there. And we started off this conversation talking about cultures. All right. And some of us are coming out of cultures where light is right. Bright is right.
Right.
Are you understand what I'm saying? So I know we can't get a fifth one in here, but even if we began to talk about the cultures inside Black cultures who put our own stuff down, that's another story altogether. That's another show.
Let me just stick one more thing in there about the discussion of shift. I know I personally experienced this because I'm married to an educator. I'm married to a musician, and there is a need for more emphasis on the arts and music. I would love to see Pine Forge Academy or any of our consortium schools have an orchestra, that sort of thing.
Very nice.
It's so many of our children miss out on that aspect of their education. Music has become such an integral part of education. And again, that could be an expensive thing to do, but I just think that when we talk about making shifts, it'd be nice to be able to offer some very nice music programs for our schools.
I concur. So we've heard music, we've heard STEM, we've heard even developing our sports programs a little bit more. I hear a lot of people say
yes on sports too. Yeah.
To be involved in competitive, because even that competition, even though we don't like competition, it develops certain skills and gifts that we want our children to have. We don't want them to feel like everything's given to them. We want them to develop this grit and this working hard for something. So I think there's a lot we have here, and I'm sure people in the comments are adding some things as well. So
yeah, we talked about recruiting quality teachers,
right,
but we don't have attractive packages for the teachers we want to attract. So, I don't know if that's a conversation for the administration of the Allegheny East Conference, or if we all have to contribute to this, cause, but it's going to take all hands on deck, like you said before.
The conference is the village.
We
are the village.
Have we done research studies? Is there, and maybe John, you can answer this. I don't mean to, sorry, producer, but do we have the compensation for teachers in comparison to schools of like ilk? Because I feel like we're saying, and I'm just wondering, is there data that supports that the compensation is not fair? Because across the board, teachers don't make enough, public, private, any context.
Yeah, I always
there's no number you can put on teaching, but I'm wondering if there has been research on that fact.
Well, the salaries, of course, are controlled by the North American Division. And so it trickles down. So it's not really a lot of times people think that Allegheny East Conference, X, Y, and Z, but actually Allegheny East Conference, they give a stipend for cost of living depending on where teachers are operating to sort of help balance out that base salary to sort of make it comparable. But that being said, I've looked at several areas, and I can tell you our Adventist schools, and it's not just Allegheny East Conference, just based on what is coming from the NAD, it's not comparable to public schools. It's close, again, Allegheny East Conference, I can say we help make it very close by offering those that cost of living piece. And then, we have a lot of incentives. For example, if you work in the Allegheny East Conference school, you get 70% off of your child's college tuition or 35% off of their regular private school tuition. And so some of those things, when you look at, if you have a teacher who benefit from that, I got 2 kids at Oakwood. So if I went to public school right now and started working, even if I made more money, it's going to go right back to Oakwood. So, so it balances out on that fact. So yeah, my prayer is that teachers just got a raise within the Allegheny East Conference. I'm very excited about that. That goes into effect. But the bottom line, what it comes down to, our teachers work very hard, and no matter what, like we said, they're never going to make enough for what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we're talking about teachers, because that is also a future emphasis of our podcast coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll be putting more of a spotlight on what they do, talking about how we can better assist them as they seek to lead our children, not just educationally, but ultimately to Christ. So just putting that plug in there. We're going to deep dive with teachers later. Charles, you had another comment, and then we're going to wrap up.
Just to put some positiveness in here, because I talked about, how well or how we're not engaging with our communities. But I just want to give a shout out to Pine Forge Academy and our sports teams. If you go to the gym, you'll see a lot of championship banners. And they're not just playing Adventist schools, they're playing other schools in Pennsylvania, and they have done very well. So Pine Forge has had a strong sports program, and I just hope it continues. But they are champions, and I'm proud to say that.
Oh yes. All right, I see some comments that we are, like you said, we are going to tackle those in future episodes. But great discussion, guys. I know we kind of put a lot out there, but I feel like the more we have these kinds of discussions, the more they will stick, the more we will it will expand people's horizons about what needs to happen collectively for certain things to move forward. Even just talking about the affordability factor that we always hear about, recognizing at some point we're going to have to raise that so that we can have the level of education that we say we want, so it's like putting that out there so people understand, like when you see certain things happening, it's not to, box certain people out, but it's to elevate it so we can bring those people in even more. I think is a discussion that we can talk more about. But one of the things we want to do this month is highlight all of our schools and also share with you some of their real needs, because some of us want to support our schools. We don't know how. We may not have one close to us. And so we kind of wanted to adopt somewhat of a adopt a school situation where we're going to share with you some of the wish lists from some of our schools just for this school year, and ask you to just commit to adopt a school to support something that they need on that wish list. This could be something as small as a pack of paper, and we're gonna share with you each week a few of our schools and what they are asking for. And so we're gonna kind of start.
Did you say that's next week?
No, each week.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, each week we're going to highlight a few other schools. We don't want to overwhelm you. We have 11 schools, by the way. Those who don't know, Allegheny East Conference has 11 schools that we're very proud of. And we want to just start by highlighting Calvary Adventist School and some of their needs. I'm gonna. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to make sure it was there. GP, you have a connection to Calvary a little bit. Can you just run down some of the things you see on that list?
Sure, sure. So for those who don't know, Allegheny East spans a territory from New Jersey all the way down to Virginia. And in southeastern Virginia, in the city of Newport News, is a wonderful school called the Calvary Adventist School. And they are early learning center. And they are a lighthouse for Christ. They're doing wonderful things, have wonderful students and staff. And here is their list. This school has a few needs, and we would like you to partner with us. They are in need of some classroom supplies, curriculum supplies, some classroom furniture, some classroom decor, and also PE equipment. And so you don't have to live in Virginia to donate to this cause. Those who are in Virginia, you're welcome to collaborate in this effort. But we are all one family, one conference, and Calvary Adventist School in Virginia is our school. And so we want to highlight CAS and these particular needs so that you can help contribute to help meet these needs so that they can have a successful, productive, and fruitful year that will begin later on this month.
And they did have a link to this particular school, the discount school supply. That's where they would like to get all of these supplies. So I did put a link in the chat. So those of you who are viewing on YouTube or Facebook, you should see that direct link to their wish list for Calvary Adventist School. So you can click on that and just find one item. And I'm talking about anybody. Some of the things start at $4. Some of them start at $7. So these are things that anybody can contribute. We're not asking you to empty out your pockets, but just if everybody just did a little bit, just think how much along our schools could be. So we're going to keep moving. We're just going to do 3 schools tonight and then do 3 more next week. Jessie R. Wagner. Jessie R. Wagner School, which is some of you may or may not know, is located right here on Pine Forge campus, right across the street from the gym. It's funny. This is a school my children attend. My oldest daughter graduated from there this year. This is a wonderful school with a lot of spirit. And, we live in an environment where there are not really a lot of Adventist children around, but there's a lot of community. And so one of the things that the principal wants are students. As you see there on their wish list, they want students. They want us to help spread the word about why Jessie R. Wagner is an important place to send your young person. But they're also asking for those who may be within the vicinity of Pine Forge, maybe Philadelphia or surrounding areas, for substitute teachers. They need people who are willing to come in and substitute for the two teachers that they have, so that they're not always, they can't take their vacations or they can't meet medical appointments because they have to be there. So we're looking for substitute teachers for them. And then they have a playground that is there but needs to be assembled. And so they're asking for help with assembling their playground there. So if someone's good with their hands and can kind of put those things together, let's reach out to Jessie R. Wagner and see how you can be of assistance to them.
Can I add one more? Because sure. I thought I was assigned to this school, so I did have a conversation with the principal. I had some communication with the principal this morning. To add to that list, the playground, they were gifted this playground, but it came unassembled. And now the challenge is to assemble it. But in addition to that, there is a fence that needs to go around that playground. And it's going to run about $7,000 to put that fence, a protective fence around the playground. So we just add that in the number 4 down there. We'll stick that in as the 4th.
We'll put these all online too. Yes. Sorry, Charles, I stole yours. I kind of got a little.
Hey, that's okay.
Got a little excited. All right, and our last school for tonight that we're going to highlight is Sharon Temple, Mr. School in Wilmington, Delaware. And for their wish list, they had 3 major things that they shared with us. Corey, since you're a guest, I'll let you share what those are right there as you see them.
Well, clearly we talked about the need for technology, right, in our schools. And so desktop computers are needed, cameras for photography class, art and development. and then smart board for each class. And so they really need some upgrades in technological equipment. So please, any way that we can support them in this initiative will go a long way.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we talked about leveling up, and it seems like the type of things that they're asking for are things that we were saying we want our schools to offer. And so thank you guys for engaging with some of these needs. And like I said, we will post these on our website. Visit ac.org/upset so you can come back and see the whole list as we go through each school. And we ask that you will just join us in adopting a school that you can help throughout this school year.
And can we encourage folk to write in if they have some resources they want to share with the education department that could be beneficial to all the schools?
Absolutely.
What's our email address, Tosh?
Yes, please email us upset@aecsda.com. Maybe you have something. Sometimes we have old things at our house. We don't know what to do with it. We have all these reams of paper. We have supplies. We have cameras we're not using anymore. We have laptops and desktops that we think are no good, but one of our schools could use them. Please share them with us so that we can share them with our schools. This is what we're talking about, community. It takes each one of us working together to make sure our schools have what they need. Okay. Well, guys, like I said, thank you for part 1 of this 4-part discussion on education. Each week, we're going to be uncovering another layer because this is something that we value at Allegheny East, and we know all of you value. And so we appreciate all of the dialogue, all of the comments. I'm sorry, so curious. Yeah, not just the old stuff. New stuff is welcome too. Yes, thanks for pointing that out. Yes. But yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Corey, for joining us. We hope you
Corey.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a solid back.
It was baptism by fire, but I think I survived.
He's a true upsetter. You can hear it coming. You can hear it.
Yes. And thank you to our superintendent who's on the road but willing to join us to talk about this important topic. And we really appreciate you. Yes.
Can I go so far? I may be going off script here a little bit, but John, can you tell us where you are? It's not personal.
No, it's fine. I am. I'm finishing up in Huntsville. We dropped our boys off here, and so we're flying out to Phoenix, Arizona. The NAD Teachers Convention is taking place from the 7th through the 10th, and so we're excited about that. All of our educators from Allegheny East Conference will be there participating in different sessions. In fact, we have a couple of Allegheny East Conference teachers who are presenting there. I know Miss Keisha Dickerson is one of them.
Nice.
And so Carol Cantu is presenting, and I'm just trying to think of them all off the top of my head. But we will be represented not just as being there, but also doing the sessions.
Okay, awesome. Well, we hope you guys stay cool out there because we hear that weather's in the 3 degrees. 3-digit degrees.
Yeah.
So stay cool out there and take plenty of pictures.
Will do.
A couple of questions are coming up about the list and information. So I'm going to add the specific links to our page right after we get off of this. But in the chat, that link for the discount school supply, that's actually Calvary's list, their specific list. It does not apply to all the schools. Someone asked if that applies to all the schools. No, each school is kind of giving their own individual list and how you can support. And so we'll just continue to share that information. We'll continue to post in the chat where you're watching, but also on our website. So check that out. And thank you guys for your interest in trying to give. That's encouraging.
Yes. And everybody can give to the Calvary School in Virginia. Amen.
All right. Well, guys, like I said, great show. Thank everyone for being here. And we'll see you back here next Sunday, because if it's Sunday,
it's the UpSet Podcast.
Thank you, GP. See, thank you.
It's the day after.
All right, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Take care.